What began as an attack against the Houthis ended up unleashing the fury of the Kremlin. US planes injured Russian sailors in a failed operation, and now Moscow not only demands explanations but plans to respond with full force. The presence of the United Kingdom in the operation only worsened the scenario. Putin will not tolerate this affront, and everything indicates that the retaliation will be as relentless as it is unexpected. The red line was crossed, and the Russian reaction could change the course of the conflict. Don't go away, stay with us until the end, because what you are about to hear could change your view of global power. Next, we will give you the details you need to understand what is really happening, and stay one step ahead. This is News for Dummies, where we explain everything to foster your critical understanding of current events. Chaos unleashed with a single order. An air operation launched under direct orders from Donald Trump aimed to neutralize the Houthis, but ended up completely out of control. The result was devastating. Russian sailors were injured by US fire, triggering a diplomatic alarm that could have explosive consequences for Washington. The incident has raised alarms in the international community and threatens to further deteriorate the fragile relationship between the United States and Russia. As Trump intensifies his military maneuvers in Yemen, a fateful error during the operation left an open wound in global diplomacy. A US bombing caused injuries to 3 Russian sailors, dramatically altering the geopolitical balance. What began as an offensive aimed at positions ended up striking the Kremlin indirectly but forcefully, right at the Yemeni port of Ras Isa. This bombing was part of the plan by the United States and its Western allies to weaken the Houthi movement, considered a persistent threat in the region and closely linked to Iran. In the dead of night, North American combat planes backed by the United Kingdom launched a swift offensive against alleged drone bases and arms depots managed by the Houthis. But the operation ended up hitting beyond the intended target. A ship linked to Russian commercial interests that was unloading crude oil at that moment received part of the attack, leaving 3 sailors wounded as a direct consequence of the impact. The affected were identified as Roman Kasper Igor Kasachenko and Artem Manim. The revelation was made by Jamal Amir, Minister of Foreign Affairs and expatriates of the Houthi government, who bluntly accused the United States of using the war as a pretext to weaken Yemen's economy and flout international norms by attacking civilian targets. Beyond the physical damage, the blow has been political and symbolic. Vladimir Putin, who has repeatedly shown he will not tolerate covert aggressions against Russia, will hardly let this attack go unanswered. Signs from the Kremlin already announce reprisals. Consolidated as a silent but powerful player, Moscow has intervened in Yemen quietly, backing key factions and supporting the legitimate government's survival against chaos sown by external interference, especially from Washington. The impact of the US airstrike goes beyond physical damage. In a context saturated with tensions and strategic maneuvers, this event adds to a chain of provocations that have put the Kremlin in a delicate crossroads. Expert voices warn that Moscow could activate a tactical response, perhaps not directly but effectively, leaving the US administration in an even more fragile position on the geopolitical chessboard. From the Kremlin, everything indicates that Putin will not overlook the aggression against his men. This asymmetrical conflict reveals the risks of a covert confrontation between great powers, where any wrong move could unleash global consequences. Yemen has become a hybrid warfare laboratory. What began as a regional dispute has escalated into a testing ground for tactics, technologies, and alliances involving state and non-state actors worldwide. The bombings coordinated by Washington and London, like the recent one in Sana'a, evidence a systematic strategy to dismantle the Houthi group. But the unexpected impact on Russian interests has completely changed the perception of the conflict. From the Russian perspective, what happened represents an unacceptable transgression. With Trump leading these offensives, the message to Moscow has been direct and hostile, just as the international panorama is undergoing full reconfiguration. Meanwhile, the Houthis continue their offensive in the Red Sea. With Tehran's backing, they have interrupted strategic routes. Washington, in its attempt to stop this threat, has intensified attacks that now place it in confrontation with another nuclear power. The offensive against Houthi drone production centers seemed a calculated move, but the impact on Russian personnel has triggered an unexpected storm. The strategic balance could break if Moscow decides to respond with more aggressive actions. It is not typical of Putin to let a blow go unanswered. This kind of incident usually receives a firm and forceful response capable of reconfiguring the military and diplomatic scene within days. The involvement of the United Kingdom in the attacks further complicates the picture. Although presented as a joint operation with the United States, for Russia it represents a direct assault from a hostile Western alliance. While London has tried to disassociate responsibility by emphasizing its efforts to avoid civilian harm, the fact that Russian sailors were injured disarms any attempt at justification before the Kremlin. What was initially announced as a surgical operation now faces severe questioning. Washington's strategy is being questioned for its lack of calculation amid a conflict full of geopolitical variables. At this point, everything indicates that Moscow is taking its time before acting, not because it doubts, but because it carefully prepares its move. The Kremlin's silence is not inaction, it is a latent threat. Pressure is growing from the White House. Criticism of the Trump administration's handling of the Middle East conflict is worsening, and with the possibility of Russian retaliation on the horizon, the margin for maneuver shrinks dramatically. The spark has been enough to ignite the powder keg. The delicacy of relations between powers has become evident. A tactical error could become the starting point for a conflict of uncontrolled proportions. What do you think about the risk of this conflict escalating into a wider global confrontation? Give us your opinion in the comment box below. This recent incident highlights a dangerous escalation in the ongoing complex conflict involving Yemen, Russia, the United States, and the United Kingdom. Historically, Yemen has been a battleground of proxy wars, with the Houthis supported by Iran, and Western powers backing opposing factions. The accidental wounding of Russian sailors in a US-led airstrike signals a sharp deterioration in US-Russia relations, risking a broader confrontation between nuclear powers. The Kremlin, having long been a quiet but firm player in Yemen, now faces the dilemma of responding decisively without provoking open war. While Washington seeks to weaken the Houthis and protect strategic interests in the Red Sea, this misstep has empowered Russia to push back politically and militarily, with the UK's involvement further complicating the geopolitical chessboard. The consequences could range from intensified proxy conflicts to direct military retaliation. Beneficiaries of the status quo may be few, as increased instability threatens global security and trade routes, while those harmed include Russian personnel and Yemen's civilian population caught in the crossfire. This incident reveals the fragile balance in a multipolar world where small errors carry enormous risks. Now it's your turn. If you found this analysis revealing, leave us a comment with your opinion on this conflict. Do you think Russia will respond militarily, or will diplomatic channels prevail? What are the possible consequences for global security? Subscribe if you haven't already, because we'll be following this story closely. Hit the bell icon so you don't miss the next video, where we'll explore how this incident might influence alliances and escalate tensions worldwide. And if you want to learn more about the Houthis' origins and their role in Yemen's war, click now on the video on screen. I promise, it will surprise you.